And any prospects of maybe international events? I know you've just mentioned all these events happening, obviously at the back of Afro Nation, and which we saw was quite popular. Would you guys consider doing like an event outside the shores of South Africa, the
We have
borders?
done events outside of South Africa before.
Okay.
We'll continue to.
Okay.
We have Boys to Men as well in Rwanda now in October, so it's not just in South Africa. We've done J. Cole in Lagos before. We've done Future in Tanzania, Mozambique. We've done a lot of artists outside of South Africa in the past. We'll continue to do that.
Welcome to another episode of the Business Agenda podcast. My name is Cash, also known as the Joburg Bachelor, also known as Uncle Cash. Welcome to episode 18. This podcast is available on YouTube and for DSPs, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And I always want to acknowledge the team, joined by my fellow co-host, Teaser, aka Vino_T. We've got Nico, who goes by Nico. We're waiting for him to announce his AKA. He's also
Nick
known
Swagger, Nick Swagger.
Nick Swagger. I don't know if we're still gonna consign Nick Swagger, but hey, we like to let people be who they are. So we're gonna go with Nick Swagger. As always, we'd like to acknowledge and thank the team that make things happen behind the scenes. For audio, thank you to Tabi the Dawn. Make sure that we've got the best sounding podcast in the game. And for visuals, we've got Tsepo. If you guys want to check out who Tsepo is, go on to Instagram and just look up who is Tsepo. Pretty cool profile name, especially for the ladies. Go and find out who Tsepo is. Today we have a very special guest, and the reason we've got a special guest, we're starting a new series on the entertainment business and entertainment side of things. You know, obviously we like to share stories. That's the focus of the Business Agenda podcast. We have a very special guest, and by very special, it's because obviously everyone who's part of this team, we are outgoing people. We're very big on events, hip hop, as you guys may know from our other podcast, the No Hidden Agenda podcast. Shout out to Mahuta and them. Our guest for today is none other than the founder, director, CEO, entertainment extraordinaire, Mr. Glenn Nechipise. I hope I said the last name right. I was practicing in the bathroom, make sure I got it correct. I was like to put respect on people's names. Glenn, welcome to you. How are you doing, my guy?
I'm good, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you did.
Thank you. Yeah, great. Like I think it's as part of Ubuntu. You know, you need to put like extra oomph into the last name. You know, our first names our Caucasian first names that our parents gave us. They're cool. They don't need too much pressure, but for the ancestors. So anyway, what we'd like to do obviously is just to unpack Glenn's story. Glenn is, like I said, he's the man behind Glenn 21 Entertainment. And just to give you a bit of a backstory, to get into Glenn's journey and how he got into this business. And by the way, Glenn runs an entertainment agency. He's not in events. I would like to make the distinction. Once upon a time, in Joburg, there are a lot of people running around saying, I do events. He's not playing at that level. That's tadpole level. He's swimming with the sharks. So I think with Glenn, we met a couple years back with my brother PK. Those of you know, at the time, at the height of his career, he had people who were looking to bring artists to South Africa. So we met with Glenn for insights and background in terms of how these things work for international shows. So he's going to give us insight into that. But I would just like to mention the fact that for those of you who are fortunate enough to be at the J. Cole concert, Unlocked a couple years ago, when some of my friends were in the room and had an extra ticket and forgot to mention me, even though I live 10 minutes away from the Dome, still a sore point as a J. Cole fan. Yeah, so that was so Glenn 21 Entertainment is involved in some of those shows. They've got an impeccable record. So I think as far back, we're talking Chance the Rapper, Drew Hill, Soul Fest, even recently with Tamir and Boys to Men. So the names that are rolling off my tongue are heavy hitters. And like I said, that's why I said Glenn is swimming with the sharks. But I think the great place to start is probably just for Glenn to highlight what is an entertainment agency in terms of your service offering and what you offer and what you guys do as your core business for our viewers.
I think our core business is mainly on conceptualizing events, and then from there we execute them. But we've also been fortunate to be able to work with brands where we curate talent for them or book talent on their behalf, whether it's for TVC or for ambassador role. So that's mainly what we do. And then obviously we are well known for the concerts that we've been doing in the past. But we play a lot in with talent, brands, events,
Okay.
and marketing.
Oh, okay. And for you, I know you've been doing this for a while. I think the meeting I mentioned where we met was like 2014. How did you get into this line of work and how did you get started?
I think when I was at UCT, my roommate was a DJ,
Okay.
and we had a pub that he would DJ at. So it meant that I was the guy behind
The scenes, yeah.
the scenes, and that's where it essentially started. And when I left, we had started, or I was working with my brother on an IT company, which at the time we didn't manage to get funding, and I had a lot of this free time, so I decided to
Go back to
start doing events, and started doing club events at that time, and that became bigger and bigger. You know, when I came from Cape Town, it was very weird in Joe because it was house. It was all,
And
could
Cape Town
listen.
is hip hop.
and Cape Town at the time was very much hip hop. I think at the time, maybe Naked DJ will have an hour. I don't know if you guys know Libby. He was another hip hop DJ that could potentially get an hour. But other than that, there wasn't like a place where you could get hip hop all night, and that was essentially how we started. Yeah.
Was this like mid 2000s?
This was 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, hip hop was even hip hop in South Africa was very small. Like,
Yeah.
from artists, you know, you only probably had like Scotty Kemp in there.
Yeah, that was early. I think late 90s to the early 2000s. Like the artists were there. I think obviously Channel was doing the majority of just putting South African artists, but there weren't too many in terms of like Glenn is saying where it's now you can have clubs that have just hip hop or hip hop events or what we have now at Mambo Neng, and there wasn't even a lot of that. You had to like really go look for it. Cape Town was actually known for that. Even I remember on Channel at the time, a lot of the international artists, whether it be Talib Kweli, all the Raucous Records artists, they were always in Cape Town. It was almost like if they're going to come to SA, they'll go to Cape Town. So my question then becomes, from your experience, and it's interesting how your journey starts, because I do know a few guys, fast forward a few years later who were at UJ, who at Wits, who did events, campus events, managed to book some of the rappers, obviously when hip-hop was coming up.
Yeah.
But then obviously they didn't follow it through to then become an entertainment agency. But how was the transition now when you moved to Joburg to now start bringing hip-hop events or just events period?
Because like when I started, I thought, what is it gonna attract people besides just the hip hop, right? And at that time, I had a friend, Tlaku Okarao, who was working for a company, an alcohol company. I don't know if you guys remember Oremolen. He used to be an ambassador at for University of Pretoria for them. And at that time, I felt I needed, besides the music, I needed something else to attract people. And because I was fresh from varsity, I figured if it's an all-you-can-drink party, people will be very much interested in coming. It's not just
to see the artists.
it's just the artist. It's also pretty much you have alcohol the whole night too. So what we did was we bought quite a lot of stock to be able to get that branding, you know. And then my cousin Chipiwa also had a spa, you know. At that time, you know, massages and things like that weren't yet popular. You know, it was actually one of the few ones at the time, and we also partnered with her. There was a colored movement called Braino.com. We partnered with them. I don't know if you remember a friend of mine called Jeremy Cohen. He had a brand
Jeremy
called Pastor Rock. So I connected with him through a late friend of mine called Tidi. So Tidi was like the mayor. Everywhere you go,
people know who he is.
people knew him. And
The name opens doors.
yeah. So he became that guy that if I need to bounce ideas or if I need to connect with people in Joburg, because I mean I was born in Venda, went to varsity in in Cape Town, so I didn't really know Joburg.
Starting afresh.
And you know, the people I was with are not in the scene, you know.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like the early connector for me. But at that time, I'm gonna mention brands because
I'll go
that's you know, that's the only way to be authentic. If you knew JMB was doing a gig, you knew it was gonna be hot. If you knew like Captain Morgan is doing a gig, you knew it was gonna be hot. So we kind of did have a lot of brands, and the brands also sided with like hip hop, and the all you can drink was a big part of what I thought was the selling point. So we did one night. The venue was 88 in Norwood. Funny enough, it's not far from here.
Yeah.
And when we booked the venue, the owner is like, "Man, I'm gonna have to charge you mad venue hire because people will be drinking for free." And
I'm not getting anything from the bar.
there was also like a corkage in the form of
Bring your
half
own
of
alcohol
the stock that
that you
I
bought. in.
had bought.
Yeah. You want
Went to
corkage
the
fee?
venue,
Oh.
and then I had the other half to actually
Sell off.
use. It's not selling now;
Yeah,
it's just people drinking.
Oh, because yeah, it's drink
yeah.
all for free. Yeah.
But it was done in a way where there's a station where people can go pour the booze, and then the bar is open. So we did one night, packed. A lot of the North kids have been waiting for like a hip hop event, and they had it. So we probably maybe used 2 bottles, if not less, of the free stock. People weren't interested in the free stock. They just went to the bar and bought it. So I had a bunch of cases of the stock that I bought, but it actually
Didn't move like you thought it
didn't
would.
move like that, you know. So that led to the owner being excited. Firstly, he had the free stock. Secondly, people ended up buying more than his usual night, you know.
Yeah.
So he approached me, and he's like, "Yeah, we need to do that again." I'm like, "Man, I lost so much
That's
money
funny.
because I put in so much stock. You have my stock, and I'm not giving you more stock."
Yeah.
Because I was still under the impression that the attraction was still
The alcohol.
you know, the alcohol as well, you know. Excuse me. So what then happened is he approached me to do it again. I'm like, "Yo, man, if I'm coming, I'm not paying the amount that I paid. And, you know, I'm not giving you any more stock." And we did the same thing again and packed. This time around, I don't think we did more than 5 people on the free alcohol. People just went and bought
By the bar.
by the bar. And this guy kept coming like, "Yo, man, you need to do this again." I'm like, "Okay, cool. The only reason I'm going to do it now is if I get the venue for free." And, you know, that was the beginning of a very strong relationship with a gentleman called Alan Freeman, who we worked together from 88. He went to own a club called The Bank in Rosebank. We ran that for him for quite a few years, and post that also became partners at a venue called The Sands, which you know, we co-owned.
We have great memories from there.
Too many. Great memories from the
Okay,
sands.
cool. If the Joburg Bachelor has it,
Trust me.
then you know, then it's interesting. But you know, like I think for a lot of people, there's like very strong history with the venue 88, and that's why I'm also mentioning his name and giving him props. I think in terms of sales, I learned so much from the guy. He sells with his humor. Just his personality sells it more than the product. I think people always fell in love with him. Like
He was the main
brand
catch.
people just enjoyed being around him, and these are at times where most brands just did not know the black people or how to get
Market to them, yeah.
into the market. And he introduced me to a lot of the guys. We started doing pretty much most of the Pernod Ricard
Brands.
brand stuff. We had
Jameson.
access to all of them, and we literally could pick how many events we wanted to do, and all of them would be sponsored. And that was the beginning of understanding that sometimes it's not so much about the concept; it's a combination of obviously delivery as well as relationships. But at the same time, I think 88 was a very strong foundation for a lot of people in the entertainment industry now. My late friend Tibbs, we became partners. We did the show Love Stuff together at 88, which for the longest time we actually wanted to do something called the School of 88, just to actually showcase some of the things that came out from 88. You got things like pop bottles that was started there.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Dimples is also no longer with us, but it was something that was bad there. And at the same time, you look at guys like Milkshake. I think when we started, working with people like Milkshake, we were paying them 500. You look at guys like VG, your Hudson, but there's quite a lot of, 88 had quite a lot of rich history. I know I'm missing some people and some brands that came out of there, but if you're talking about lifestyle, hip hop, and everything, it was quite a
great training. And a lot of
it was a great beginning, and at the same time, other brands came up, like .3, which was quite.
Would you say that's like where, like sort of like the bedrock of your career, like where you really learned the most? Because obviously, like with the younger people, whatever you start, you tend to struggle quite a lot. And you mentioned the loss you made on your first event there, etc. And generally, obviously, people tend to give up quite quickly, etc. So, would you say then that's like where you paid your school fees essentially?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot by being there. I think exposure is everything. You know what I mean? What you're not exposed to, you don't know. Like I said, I was born in Venda. When I was in Venda, Thunder was the biggest thing for me. Because that was what I was exposed to. I thought, man, this is amazing. You know what I mean? And when I was a child, I thought every black man was Venda because that's what I was exposed to in Venda. You know what I mean? But then the more you get exposed, whether it's through TV and stuff like that, then you start seeing, oh, there's more.
Expand your horizons.
You know what I mean? Like, so I think with 88. It's a strong foundation in the sense like I met a lot of people, especially through Alan, and there's a gentleman called Tony Feldman. He owns a company called Showtime Management, so he was promoting shows. At the time, he was promoting a show with 50 Cent, G-Unit, and the sales went so great. Alan connected us to say, yo, this kid fills up this club, every night it does, you know. That then gave me like a different exposure to something that I wasn't actually looking at in a way. And, you know, with something like 88, it's strong in the sense like I learned everything there, you know what I mean? Like at 88, I've been a bouncer there. I've cleaned
The floors.
the shop. I've been behind the bar. I've connected the sound system. I've DJed there. I've pretty much done the basic that you can't learn that on a large scale event. You know what I mean? As much as everyone wants to start big and wherever, if you are doing that at the Dome, you have a cleaning company. You ain't gonna know. You're not gonna, you know what I mean? You're not gonna learn. But when you are at a smaller place, we were able to learn
Every facet.
how does security really work? What is the bouncers challenge you? What is, all those sort of stuff. So it was a very massive, learning ground for us, and it also brought other people. Like Anything Goes is one of the big agencies, that do the Corona Sunset, also part of Ultra. So when we were young, he used to promote Saturdays. I would do Fridays, But what that did was also create a bond with other people from different backgrounds, and also understanding how the different market works, and also, we met quite a lot of people there because of my background with UCT. A lot of guys coming back from there, they didn't know what to do in Joburg, so you
rope them in.
They end up supporting us. But yeah, it was probably the biggest foundation. Yes.
You mentioned earlier that when you started, a lot of the brands didn't know how to market to like the black market or even hip hop. What do you think was probably your biggest value add coming to that space as someone who was roped in terms of, obviously, helping the brands bridge that gap? Because I think brands are always looking for opportunities, but sometimes they don't have the know-how or the people understand like what the market is and what they're looking for. So like, what do you think learning experience at that time and just value add, or where were they missing it? And how did you guys come in and bridge the gap?
At the time, some of the things, like especially when you're young, you don't actually realize what you're doing, or
you figure it as you're going along.
The impact, and also like how you can take advantage of it. Some of the best funded events were potentially our West events.
Really?
Yeah. I remember we did an event in town. This time around, it was myself, Tibbs, Chris, the mayor, Blue Collar. We collaborated, and it was quite a big investment from a brand. We were doing something super experiential. We built a casino in town, but it just so happened that day was a busy day. Like people didn't come, and it just did not happen for us, And the other one, which was really well funded, when we were young, we always wanted to experiment, especially when I was still working with Thieves at the time. We also did a partnership with a group called House of Funk. They were like the biggest promoters in the white side, and we consider the biggest promoter on the black side. Obviously, we're not talking concerts, but like in terms of like the culture or in the ground, they were killing it. I won't lie, we were also killing it at the time. So we did that conceptually. I remember that party was called Pimp My Party, but it was also quite, we got in trouble with MTV at the time because Pimp My Ride was at its prime, Yeah. We, excuse me, we had a solid idea, but maybe we were ahead of of our consumers, in the sense that we thought, damn, it's gonna be
Well
a
received.
carnival of you know,
Nesting.
the Rainbow Nations.
Exactly.
We did this at Carfax. The numbers didn't work, you know. And once again, concepts and reality. That's
Execution.
where, you know, they become. They're far apart. You know.
How did you find the real estate aspect of the business, as well as sort of the intellectual side of it? For instance, you could go to someone and approach them with the venue and do what you need to do, versus you sort of saying like the Sands, you kind of have your own primary base where you can kind of do your events. How did you find it too, from operating perspective?
I think owning a venue is not something I wanted to do. It just happened. Obviously based on the partnerships that I've had, especially with Alan. We moved together from 88 to the bank. When you're talking about the bank, it was Alan and Malcolm, Malcolm owned Carfax before, and a few other places. They own House Kitchen now and all that sort of stuff. So it was a combination of two other guys.
Okay.
And when we moved to the Sands, I became the third person in that relationship. And at that time, my partnership was together with Cannock Productions as well, who at the time was consulting for on the concerting side. I think I went into the owning of a club at a later stage, and maybe too late, because I was also expecting a child at the time, and in a serious relationship. I was no longer the Joburg bachelor.
Those days were done.
Yeah, those days were done. So at that point, I couldn't give it the time that it needed, because it's a 24/7 business, to be honest. As much as you have events once a week, you gotta be there every day. I was unable to sustain that, and also, my interest in IT was still strong. We're pursuing something else on IT. We're a software company which I was working with my older brother on, and also Clan 21 on the side, / Cannock Productions as well. So there was just so much. With a baby on the way, it just was not something that I could maintain. So that stint didn't last long. Yeah.
What about talent? Working with talent, because that can be, we told it can be a headache on its own. Artists, DJs, bookings, and
their
things
management
like that.
and all that.
I think I was fortunate enough that, like I said, when I was working with Tips,
he's reputable.
he was, so my setup with Tips was I had a full-time. I also got to work for a cigarette company to organize events, so I couldn't actually trade with Clan 21.
Okay.
So we ended up trading as Show Love, and that meant that operationally I'm doing my side of things, but under that brand. And at the time, he was managing Dimples, Milkshake, and then later on AKA. And then VG, Bo Black. There was a lot. He was very much into artist management. So I had the pleasure of being involved but not being involved.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I could
Handle
deal with
that.
them.
Yeah.
But it's not my responsibility.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was quite fun. And it's also quite interesting at the same time. I remember when Ivy League came with, I want it all.
Yeah.
And like, yo, man, this is gonna be the future, you know. And at the time, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm excited. You know, we're trying to just like raise money to get a video. But the excitement of the guys, and when it actually blew up, I'm like, oh, damn.
They were right.
Yeah. These people were onto something. So, like I said, I had the pleasure of working with the talent without
Sort
the
of,
baggage,
yeah.
you know? So that was quite nice. And, you know, like some people, like, you know, if I go and find something that I like, that's dope talent, I could say, yo, Tips, take over that thing.
Yeah.
There's future there, you know what I mean? So, which meant that, you know, there was that closeness to it. And, you know, like for someone like Dimples, he had a concept on Paul Bottles which he had a different ideas to it. And when we spoke and refined it, it became what it was, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, once that was refined, he also had the vision of it that propelled that brand to be what it became, you know? So working with talent is special. I don't think I could do it full time. And I'm fortunate I didn't have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, right, like more, obviously I'm more curious more on the business side, right? So it sounds like obviously you were running multiple things, a lot of moving parts. So firstly, what I'm curious about is the company is called Glen 21 Entertainment. So I just wanted to find out what the 21 is for. And then just secondly on the concept. So if you can just take us through something like that, do people just come and approach you and say, look, I have this amazing idea, and then you take it from there, and then you do like the funding behind it later to see whether it's going to be viable, or can you squash an idea based on the fact that it's simply not viable, even if it's a great idea? So it's two.
I mean, it's quite a loaded question. You know what I mean? Like, it depends on what stage of my career you're talking about. Like in the beginning, we would come up with ideas, you know. The period where I was working with, let's say, Show Love. You know, I can give you an example. One of our most successful event was called Old School, New School. Old School versus New School, sorry. You know, I had an idea that came when we were in Long Street Cafe for New Year's Eve. DJ Kenzero was playing, and by far one of my best experience in terms of like just the musical journey, you know. And that was my first time actually listening to a DJ Kenzero set. And when I came back in Jan, I go to Tips. I'm like, man, we gotta do an old school party. So my idea was just old school, right? He's like, yeah, but we're about, you know,
Current.
we're about the current. You know, and then that conversation ended up with us saying, okay, cool, let's just do old school versus new school, you know? And that meant, like, I think the first one we did was Milkshake versus Kenzero. Of course, I was supporting as a DJ. I played all the other hours. And it was potentially the pinnacle of our 88 movement, that part. And then, you know, you can bring it back to currently now, you know. I have a partner called Warren Legrange, who's like a chief creative officer for us. most of the time, I might have an idea, or he might bring an idea. So, for instance, like a Hey Neighbor now, if it was not the involvement of other people, I would have called it Still 21 or something funny like that, right? But, he would challenge you to say, we need a purpose, we need all this stuff.
The vision.
For me,
not that important.
You know what I mean? The practicality of it for me is like, man, it's a festival. We're going to have whatever, But, there are people that are special in that regard. Like, he's one of them that he'll conceptualize the things. He'll give us things that make it what it becomes. So, an idea is it's a process in most cases.
Yeah. Is it business? Is it business before the by business I mean obviously the numbers before the it's gonna work out, or is it look, this thing is gonna really blow your mind and then we can talk about the numbers later?
I think eventing is one of those craziest industry, right? Like we often joke, or it's like a well-known thing that they say we're professional gamblers in the sense of you could win, and you could win big, or you could lose, or you could lose very big. Most of the objectives, or most of the time when you are creating an event, what you are trying to achieve is just break even.
Really? Just break even?
Yeah.
In the immediate term, with the view that in the long term it will work out.
Yeah. Especially on a longer term brands,
Makes sense.
Because to create a brand, it takes time. And in most cases, you are losing money building that brand. You know what I mean? So
loss leading.
Yeah. After a certain level of experience, you want to make sure that what you don't do is lose money, but at least there's progress, and there's also like movement, moving forward and creating something. Sometimes is not the event you do that makes you money. It could be the relationship you create with that. It could be it's not a once-off thing. Like if you look at it as an individual thing, that's where it becomes tricky.
And then how was maybe I wanted to ask you, so when did you meet Warren, and when did you sort of start working together then?
So, Warren, I met him, he was with another agency. I had a different agency. And we were pitching for like a lot of the same things. And at that time, we were losing to these guys regularly. Like Warren's agency, or the agency was working for, was just beating us, plain and simple. At that time, it was just me and Yolanda, and we were using our designer as a creative, which, it wasn't working, to answer you. We knew the market, we understood the market, but we actually didn't understand how to pitch or how to actually sell ourselves. And at that point, we could have access to go to pitches, but we weren't actually landing, or even answering
the brief.
The brief, because our thing is we knew the market, we understood, we had the market, but we were not an agency.
Yeah, can I ask, maybe just for the sake of clarity?
Yeah.
Do you mean something like when DSTV or MultiChoice as a company that obviously provides TV, etc., then they say they want to do Delicious first?
Yeah.
Is that what they would put out to the market, and then that's what you would pitch for? sort of execute for them? Is that what pitching is like? Pitching to these big brands that do.
Of course. Any brand will come to you and say, maybe we want to have a summer campaign or we want to do a series of events. This is the brief, and then you go pitch for it, right? Okay. So at that time, we were losing quite regularly to this guy, and the company he was working for went under.
Okay.
At that time, I was in search of a creative director.
Okay.
And when I found out that the company is under, I did approach him to say, where are you? He had visions of having his own company as well. But, we managed to, I became a partner with him on the other side, and he came and we pitched, and we won the account. And from there, we started working together, and we are still working together now.
Is that how you guys got Unlock?
Yes. Yeah.
And then, so when you get to that stage, because now this is elevated. So how does that transition happen to you? Are you growing team? Are you guys still managing talent when you're starting to do like international events? Or you kind of also rely on the brands to do their part? How does this compare to sort of what you kind of knew, with the School of 88, sort of your basis? This feels like a level up
transition.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're skipping a step, because, it's kind of key to understand, and also, for any young person that's possibly watching, you just think of one step.
Yeah.
It
was like to give that clarity.
How we got in the building was not Unlocks.
Okay.
We had done some work with them in the past. And, I had done a show, Maxwell, with Castle Molstad.
Okay.
That was actually, within SAB, that was actually the first brand that we worked with, and we started helping with talent and stuff like that. But what happened was there was a local show that was not selling well, that we were asked to come promote.
Okay.
So we entered through doing promotions, and from there, the realization of that our scope is actually bigger, or we can handle a lot bigger. So we started getting a lot more within our brief, and we ended up kind of handling the it wasn't called influencers at the time. It wasn't termed that way, but we ended up kind of like really the entire marketing of the event, being responsible. And then from there, once again, because of our presence within the industry, we knew the right talent and stuff like that, like, for instance, J. Cole, we were involved. It was not just us, it was also us with Showtime. And Tony Feldman, who, once again, I met him through Alan Freeman from 88. And we went to deal with talent on that, and also just the strategy on how to sell out that show. And, that came because we marketed the other show, So we're now able to now put a full-on marketing strategy. At that time, our company was not responsible for producing the event. The company that Warren was working for, at that time I hadn't met, was then the one that were organizing, and we just dealt with talent and the marketing of it. It was quite a huge success, because I think J. Cole sold out in 1 hour.
It's crazy.
So that also gave us a lot of credibility, because they had done shows with potentially bigger talent than that, but they weren't able to sell. because obviously the strategy was not
Aligned.
to the market and all that sort of stuff. So then when the other company went under, we were already handling quite a lot of piece of that
stuff.
business.
Okay.
And when we pitched,
Managed to pick
it
it
was
up, yeah.
a lot.
Easier.
I wouldn't say a lot easier. It was better because we knew more about the brand. We knew more about what needed to be done, and yeah, that became.
I wanted to ask, was it you guys or was it before, or wasn't you guys who took Travis Scott to Limpopo?
That was us. Yeah,
Is it?
That was us. Yeah,
Was it because you're from Limpopo?
No, Limpopo is a very forward province. A lot of trends start from Limpopo, like in terms of consumer behavior. You'll be surprised, even now, there's a brand that we're working on, quite a high-end brand. They want to trial something in Limpopo.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
Interesting.
I think in terms of like marketing trends or all that sort of stuff, in cases, if there's a decline in Limpopo, it transcends to, whatever. So it was based on insights rather than just saying,
I'm from there.
let's go to Limpopo, let's go wherever, It was quite interesting. It was
How did the brands find it?
in what sense?
Because I mean, for the most part, it's Joburg, KZN, Cape Town.
Down.
To bring this different, or maybe to them it doesn't matter as long as the ROI, the maths, and those things.
Well, I mean, it matters. You're not gonna put that sort of money, and it doesn't matter. I think it was great for the brand. I think it was great for the area as well. Obviously, the tension that you want as a brand, the talkability. You're gonna find people, especially with social media these days, that are undermining Limpopo. Like, why would you take Travis?
Exactly.
That's what happened.
All that sort of conversation, and then you find Limpopo is like, of course we're happening, So it was great, and also like the production that we did there was amazing, and yeah, that was quite good. I mean, it felt good being from there as well.
Yeah.
Sense of pride.
For it to happen in my province, so that was quite good.
Yeah. So 2 questions again. The first one, the 21, and then the second real one. The like in these big events, right? Like, if you could maybe just give a brief overview of from end to end, like how does it start and how do you progress to, we on the other side, we just see an announcement, tickets are for sale, and then we go buy the tickets. But what I'm really curious about is more the back end of the process, right? Because obviously there's a lot of work that comes in before we get to see the the adverts and things like that. So I'm more curious to get like a sort of like an overview of, or the full circle of how these things start. We have spoken about obviously how some of the creatives will come and present some ideas and things like that, but taking it forward, particularly on the bigger events. And I've already heard that you mentioned the word collaboration quite a lot. Like, you speak about a lot of people, so it sounds like a very intense process.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of people involved in, especially for events our size. Obviously. Like, there's the production side of things, there's the talent side of things, there's the creative side of things, right? So on the production side, we have Lebo Mutsanyane, who is also a partner of mine on a company called Lucky Number 8, because she was in business prior to me, way more experienced than me, like in the production side of things. So she heads up, the production in our group. the same way that I met Warren, and we became one. It's the same way with Lebo. So she worked with us on Chris Brown, and I really enjoyed working with her, and I liked how she worked. And at the time, our company was growing so fast. I felt like we needed a chief operational officer, and I thought she was fit for that title, and we brought her in, and so she handles quite a lot to do with the production, right? And now we are also restructuring because it's quite busy for me in terms of you spend your entire days in meetings or doing things like
pitching,
so the other side, the admin and everything else can also fall aside, So there's Yolanda, who she started as a door lady for us when we were still doing club events, and now she's kind of like running our day-to-day, which allows me to then, focus more on the business side, and also securing the business. So more of what I do is let's make sure there's money to pay what needs to be paid, and also let's make sure that there's, I get projects, and then most of it, the day-to-day is not necessarily what I do, the other people would take care of it, we're full. We're about 30 of us, so it's quite a big team. People deal with different stuff. But to answer you, firstly on the 21, I might have to give you the censored version. My wife might be watching this.
I've heard that on this podcast before. My wife might be listening.
But I was a basketball fan, There's a guy called Tim Duncan, who I loved, and
legend.
I was also born on the 21st of August, and in high school there was a girl I was in love with. She was born on the 21st, I think October. So 21 became
prominent number.
Quite a special number for me, and when I was at UCT Leo Macquarie Hall, I kind of like basketball was my thing there. I was like the coach and the captain of the team. I don't know if you remember Farai, by the way.
Yeah.
The late Farai. So we build a team for the residents. I think besides Marquette, probably Clarendon, I pushed everyone. And my sports rep at the time, I pushed him to a point where we got a uniform, or the kids. And Marquette had like this yearly thing that they would write, or quarterly things like updates and whatever on sports. This is what happened. I would sign off as Glen 21. And that's where...
And it just started.
The start of, we're going to Glen 21 party. And when I moved up here, just used it as Glen 21. Yeah.
So I guess maybe just to try and also transition, and maybe you can maybe provide some clarity to us. I think what Nico was also asking is in a sense of a pitch is done, a brief is gotten, now you're appointed. I'm assuming that's when the budget gets approved, and then talent comes, and then these are the numbers. So for instance, when you're talking Unlock, or maybe you're talking Hey Neighbor, is this where you this, I don't know, 6 months, you're going back and forth with their management, you're looking at the numbers, is that the process that it takes, you know, to make sure that the numbers make sense. And then by the time you actually go and say, let's sell the tickets,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? From that perspective, and then you can say, okay, this project is viable.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I can tell you the textbook one, but like reality is not
Yeah,
is
like
not like
that.
that, right?
Yeah.
But the process is usually you would identify who you want, and then you should have an idea how much that will cost you. You build a budget, and then you go approach their agents, and you start negotiating up until a point where you have an agreement. Obviously, before you present your offer, you must have obviously secured venues or at least pencil booked, because you need to give them specific time, date, budgets, all that sort of stuff. So from there, once you secure the talent, you then have to secure the venue. And then once you secure the venue, you then have, depending on the seating plan or whatever the size of the venue, then you get capacities and stuff like that. You start loading tickets. By then, we're assuming that you have a budget, so you know what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
So when you obviously come up with your ticketing, you make sure that it covers your cost and you have some margins in there. And then you can announce the show, and that's when you can start selling tickets, and comes the production of the show, and then
Do you sorry, Teaser? Do you worry, or do you take into consideration other similar events happening at a similar time or close in a close proximities and things like that? I'm asking this because obviously Gauteng is a small province, for example, and then we have seen multiple events happening in quick succession, and then one being successful, one not being successful. So do you consider what else is happening, what your competitors, if you're gonna call them that, are doing, etc.?
I've had moments in my past where I didn't and it bent me, and I've also had moments where I did but still won. You know what I mean? So it's not like there's a formula, because sometimes if it's such a busy weekend that everyone is out because there's so much happening, you could have several events winning, but then you can also have too much for the market where one event will win where the other won't win, you know? So it's unpredictable. I mean, December is full of events, and most of them are successful, you know? You look at September, I mean, we got a very hot week coming in September.
It's hectic.
Where, I mean, that one weekend has probably 6 very big events happening at the same time.
Sitting up in this stadium.
Yeah, you know, you got, you know, you have to consider certain things, like, you know, at our age, we have funerals. At our age, if there's a wedding, you gotta attend it, you know. So there are those sort of things, and funny enough, that is potentially one of the busiest weekend for weddings. That's
long weekend.
It's a long weekend. Blah blah blah. So
People travel.
those sort of stuff always happen, and you know, before you would target the last weekend of the month because people are paid, they have money. It can be a good, a bad thing, because there's so many things happening. But at the same time, if you need to maybe sell last minute tickets, you know that you have that month end to sell more. But man, there is no formula. I think in most cases it's just God's grace. There is
Professional gambling.
Yeah, it's literally what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah.
How did us, sorry, on like with the international artists, I've always wanted to know, like I think when we met, you gave us some insights.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of people have tried to get into events and got their fingers burned because, like you said, to confirm the artists, I know at the time, I don't know if you can confirm, Live Nation is probably one of the bigger ones to confirm they're an international artist. But what's the process like for Glen 21 Entertainment or anyone in that industry? Let's say you want to get Kendrick for Hey Neighbor. Are they like, is this go through the formal channels, obviously with Live Nation, or just how does that, very, very briefly, how does it work for the international artists to land them? Because I'm sure people would want to know the process that happens in the background.
I think, I mean, the way it works is an artist will have an agent who's responsible for booking them, right? The agent will interact with the artist management, and that's where the decision get made, whether it makes sense for the artist or not. So we deal a lot more with artist agents rather than artist management or the artist directly, you know?
Okay.
You find cases where an artist might have an interest in coming to South Africa. In that case, the management is going to speak to the agent to say, yeah, can you find us an opportunity in Africa or in South Africa? That way an agent will come out
looking
to promote us, you know. Live Nation are one of the promoters that they're likely to go to. You know, they're the biggest in the world. Then you have AEG, and then quite a lot, you know. So, for instance, in a market like South Africa, you obviously have Big Concert, Showtime Management. You have us and others. So if an artist in particular wants to come to South Africa, I think in terms of more like your hip-hop or the urban side of things, you know, one can argue, but I think we potentially the most prominent. I don't think the other companies focus on that. And vice versa. I don't think if a rock and roll artist is looking to come here, will be on top of their
radar.
You know, their radar. So, you can approach the agent, or the agent could approach you, depending on where the interest starts. So if it starts from you as a promoter, you will go to the agent. If it starts from the artist, then the artist will go. The agent will come to you. Yeah.
And now you guys have this massive one now.
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah.
It looks like it's, you know, there's copy, but you know, this is big. It's very like, it's exciting for many of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're also doing it at the back of, I don't know, COVID, I guess. Like, what did you guys, you know, what were you guys thinking around it? Is it excitement? Is it, you know, you understand that people are back outside and you're like, it's the right timing, you know, to launch a unique one like this? Or it's just you guys sort of going again for the next level and the next level?
You know what, like, you know, most of the things, man, is, I will always tell you, God's grace and God's timing, as well as obviously the preparations or being prepared, you know, being available. Since COVID, there's been quite a big uptake in events, you know. There's been quite a massive success on events. And there's also been quite a massive failure because the economy is also quite tight. Things are very tight. I think COVID, during that period, it also gave us time to think, like, what does the landscape look like? What is happening in South Africa? What's happening in other parts of the world, right? For us, Hey Neighbor is a world-class festival that, you know, in years to come, we want you to be able to compare it with anything in the world and feel that we have our own in our backyard that can compete with anything in the world, right? We've been intentional with the lineup. The lineup is world-class.
It's amazing.
You know,
it's amazing.
If we may say so ourselves, right? But what we want to do is match that world-class lineup with a world-class production, right? We've obviously had the privilege of working with some really big budgets in the past, being exploring different productions. You know, some of the stuff that we did at the Dome, we've challenged all the limitations. You know, we've done the biggest LED in the Southern Hemisphere at any indoor venue, and we've managed to do different things. You know, but now there was a limitation with indoor. We found a piece of land that you can literally build a city in. There's no limitations on, you know, weights, any other sort of stuff. So we're quite excited that we'll be able to build something spectacular, you know, within our backyard. And we want to provide a world-class production. We want to provide a world-class lineup. And, you know, I don't like to compare because we don't have anything like it
this,
here.
yeah.
And I also would like to think that it's distinctive to maybe anything else in the other parts of the world as well. But there are things that have inspired us, you know, like, you know, South America has Rock in Rio, you know, Europe has Tomorrowland, Glastonbury, America has Coachella, Bonnaroo, all that sort of stuff, right? We didn't see something of that scale. Like, we don't necessarily have like a 3-day festival on that scale.
The capacity,
You know,
yeah.
And that's what we
Aiming for.
we aiming for. Yeah.
Yeah. And any prospects of maybe international events? I know you've just mentioned all these events happening, obviously at the back of Afro Nation, and which we saw was quite popular. Would you guys consider doing like an event outside the shores of South Africa?
We have done events outside of South Africa before.
Okay.
We will continue to.
Okay.
We have Boys to Men as well in Rwanda now in October, so it's not just in South Africa. I mean, we've done J. Cole in Lagos before. We've done Future in Tanzania, Mozambique. We've done a lot of artists outside of South Africa in the past. We'll continue to do that. I mean, one thing to remember is like Africa is different. It's not like
very diverse.
Europe, you know. Outside of South Africa, it's very difficult to do a hard ticket. By hard ticket, I mean like your shows are completely reliant on ticket sales. In most of the other African countries, you gotta rely on brand partnerships rather than just completely on ticket sales. The other part is like the banking and as well as ticketing. It's not as advanced as you'll find here. So it's it's a challenge, you know. Our neighbors in Zimbabwe, they got things like Jacaranda Festival, which is, you know, quite successful, and they found a way
to make it work.
To make it work. You know, you look at Swaziland has a festival that's been there for a long time that they're making it work, you know. So I think there's an opportunity, but there's also a big challenge of disposable capital. I mean, disposable cash. Like most of the African countries don't have quite a large number of people that can do big scale or be able to afford to attend big scale events.
They did. I'm not sure if you were still working with Dimples at the time, but they did Paw Battles in Mauritius.
Oh yes, okay.
That's so fly.
Yeah. No, I wasn't at the time.
Yeah.
So we were more involved. When it started, it was me, Tips, and Dimples, but we were involved mainly when it was at 88, because at the time I was responsible for 88 in terms of like, I don't know how else to call it, but the black stuff that was happening there.
Yeah.
I was responsible for that.
Yeah.
So we
Culture.
kind of like
Yeah, the
worked
culture.
together for that period of 88. And then I assisted him a little bit when it moved to Emoyeni. The first one I started at 88. And from there, it was just a brotherly thing of where I can guide him or wherever, you know. Because I think at some point, because there was kind of like a conflict between are you running the venue? Are you running or are you part of running Pop Bottles, you know? Because like at some point, Pop Bottles became bigger than the show love events we were doing on the Friday nights, because we were all targeting the last Friday of the month, and then Pop Bottles will be the last Sunday of the month. You know, when you're now trying to balance the books, you know, start, yo man, let's do another Pop Bottle. You know, let's do, and Dimples was very particular about the brand, like, and you know, like he looked after that brand. Like if we were involved, we probably would have ran it down, because it became a business. But to him, it was the brand, you know. For the longest time, he rejected sponsors because he felt they didn't fit the brand.
I wanted to ask you on the point of sponsors, right? Like me being a layman, I always hear the events are sponsored by X, Y, and Z. So the question is, do you get sponsors involved if it's the other way around to sort of balance the books? And do sponsors sponsor, like what exactly do they sponsor? They bring, if alcohol brand, if SAB comes, and they say, we've been to these events, and they say it's only SAB products that are getting sold. So I'm curious to know, what exactly do you get in return for something like that? And also like, is it monetary, non-monetary, or how does it really, the sponsoring thing work?
It differs. You can get a deal where it's a stock deal. You can get a deal where it's a cash and stock. It could just be cash, cash and bus infrastructure. You could, it depends what the brand has to offer, what their objectives are as well.
What they want to get out of the event.
Yeah, what they want to get out of the event. So there is no one thing, it could be anything. It could also be just pure butter exchange. It could also be a combination. Of course, it makes a bigger difference when there's a cash injection. But the cash injection could just be as good as a service, because you don't pay
for it.
For the service. So it depends on what you are trying to achieve and what you need to make your event successful.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that
man, you're gonna need the lights. That's just gonna be a black guy talking.
I think they have. I don't think they have a generator.
It's 2 o'clock.
We should have known.
Okay, so let's just record.
Okay.
I was going to ask you the sales, because I think obviously the lineup is quite expensive, but the tickets and even the idea of like allowing people to pay in installments, that was like new for me from events perspective. I suppose you guys had considered all of that before you could actually execute it.
I think it's when you're doing something new, it is always something we invented, something that actually exists. It's always been there, but maybe people didn't consider it because of maybe the ticket prices of what they're trying to buy at the time. But the payment plan was always there. It's always existed.
Yeah, the pay Mobi thing. Okay.
It's always been
Available.
It's available, right?
And it's available to as little as like a 50 rand ticket. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think maybe not really applied it to like an event where you can pay off in installments.
Yeah. So
with this event, it did make sense considering.
Yeah. So yeah, it's always existed. It's there. It's not unique.
Yeah, I guess this one made more sense for people to actually consider that.
Correct.
If you want the full weekend ticket, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the most popular questions, people, like I was chatting to a few guys and I'm gonna be talking to you, and one of the most popular questions was, particularly after the ticket sale prices, right? Was surrounding what an international artist would plus minus cost to come to SA, without mentioning a specific artist or something like that. Like if maybe stuff like that is what then drives the ticket prices, or what exactly, like.
What factors determine the?
Yeah.
The rumor is Kendrick Lamar cost 750,000 USD.
Yeah. So,
And then people think that's why the ticket would be like, like 5,000.
Yeah. Maybe, you know what? You know the thing, we're still rolling the camera because we can use a bit of the last bit of audio, so we can
From
just
the camera.
conclude.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just conclude like that.
Okay.
You can conclude it, actually, and continue the conversation. Maybe.
Yeah. I think, artists cost a lot, and I think the figures you mentioning sounds like a lot, but it's actually a lot more than that.
sheesh.
I'm not surprised.
If you really want to see what A-list artists cost, you can go on Google and just look around. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can see what a headliner cost. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like like if it was 750, damn, I would be smiling. It's way like it's like it's.
And they come with the production. I mean, I remember Beyonce with Global Citizen, like when they mentioned like all these people, ushers, and like I suppose you're paying for like
The
all of
entourage.
your production, you know what I mean?
The whole team, the entourage.
Well, there's different deals. There are deals that includes production, and there are deals that exclude production.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like for instance, just a jet from the US,
Yeah.
let's say from LA to here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sheesh.
A private jet that sits 8 people.
Yeah.
It's over $300,000.
Yeah.
So
got
that's
14.
you know what I mean. Like that's not
Yeah.
that's not
small.
actually an artist fee, or not even his
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
That's
And
just
then,
the
you know what I mean.
flight,
Like
yeah.
just a flight for 8.
Yeah.
I was gonna.
It's a crew of more than maybe let's say 50 people.
Mm-hmm.
So you still gotta. There's still the flights for the other
Part of the team.
42 people.
Then accommodation.
Like it's what I think. I mean, it's also just understanding what takes something of that nature
Yeah.
To get it going.
to get it going, and obviously there are other people within the industry that you ask yourself, why haven't they done it? It's because the economies are quite are quite hectic, for it to even become a slight possibility. It means also the ticket price will be will be hefty, and it takes someone just being conscious, or at least applying themselves, to say, man, this sort of lineup is gonna cost a lot of money. But also, our show or the festival is not about the lineup. It's a whole package.
Yes,
The production that we're gonna do is not the production that you see every day. You know what I mean? It's like something that when you're there, you're like, damn,
Experience.
Yeah.
Almost.
this is
Upper echelon.
yeah, this is something else. So it's harder to explain that to someone who hasn't seen it, or someone who's not trying to actually understand or have context at all. Yeah.
Is it like in South Africa we get artists and they'll be asking for certain like book a 5-star hotel, I'm coming with a crew of 5, 6, etc. Do you get a similar thing where I spoke to another guy who brought one of the international guys to SA in the transport side, and then he was saying that the guys wanted to go to Kruger, they wanted to go to XYZ, Y in Joburg, and then so do the guys typically ask for similar stuff like, you know, I only drink X, I need 10 cases of this and all of that, or are those the minor costs after bringing them
After
to
the
SA?
fact, yeah.
I honestly think, you know, it makes news, but it's actually not a factor.
Yeah.
Like, if you are doing large scale event, I think a rider is possibly
This
not
works, yeah.
not even a factor. You know, one time I was with this family, and I was working for them, or I was actually, I don't even know if it's working for them, but I went with the wife, and she was driving a Ferrari, right? And I entered into the Ferrari, and I'm like, yo, the petrol in this car must cost a lot. You know, she said to me, darling, when you buy this car, petrol is the last thing you worry about, you know. But it was relevant for me, and it's the same thing. Like, I think, you know, that the worst I've seen with riders is, especially now, I've done some few local shows where, you know, like with artists, where the rider was meant to be people who come, be at the event, there is stuff to drink and all of that, but the new culture now is artists are coming with bags. They just come with their time to play. Someone will go with the bag to the backstage, put the alcohol in the bags. That becomes a takeaway, which I never understood. Like, I don't understand. Like, that is madness. You know, it's not about what it is for.
They don't even stay anymore.
They're not even staying anymore. You know, it's literally someone with a bag.
Just collecting
stash it. That's like becomes something else, you know.
It's transactional.
But yeah, it's not a big factor at all. Like, rider, it may make the news, social media might get excited, but
it's part of the business.
Yeah.
And then your phase one, those sold out, right?
Yeah.
And the interest is there. Because I think sometimes we don't know. You know, we only see social media.
I think, you know, social media is the most misleading thing, because most of the people that are talking, one, some don't even have an interest in the event.
That's true.
Two, no matter the complaints they may be giving you, even if you resolve them, they're not going to buy the ticket. You know, in most cases, the biggest commentators or the biggest critics are not even involved.
That's true.
And, you know, I'll give you an example. When we released Tamia, I think social media sentiment was, why are you bringing Vince, right?
Yes.
And it sold out in less than 5 days.
Yeah.
Right?
And you had to actually add another day.
Yeah, and that also sold out quite quickly, right?
Yeah.
And if it has beans, you know, the sales are saying something else.
Yeah.
But if you look at the commentators, they're saying something else, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's also the same thing with Boys to Men. I mean, that sold quite quickly. You know? But the sentiment once again has been. And you sometimes go to the artist that a few of his commentators might think that's the relevant artist or whatever, and you don't sell. So that's where you have to balance what sells versus what's popular on social media.
Yeah. Now, what about the venue? You know, transaction capital bonds. You know, you don't have like You don't have like this mid-tier between 10,000 and stadium.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, there's no arena in Joburg.
Yeah.
That's sad.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, that's sad. Yeah. So we need some investors to to put some money to do that. Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if we should speak with the pension fund guys at some stage and figure out
If they wouldn't be.
because I'm assuming we should have operated the dome like a lease, right? There's a fee, or maybe it was COVID that really killed it because it's really so busy. Yeah. Okay, they just couldn't. They probably didn't want because But I heard that originally it was actually it was meant for it to be a cash show. Yeah. It just cut.
It came full circle.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, no man, and then I suppose lastly for me it's the I suppose the vision, like you said, it's the first year. So how long you want it to? How long do you guys see this? It can be like a lifetime thing, right?
Yeah. It's a yearly event.
Yeah.
And it will happen for a long time.
Yeah. And then the December date is not changing, or that might fluctuate.
We want it to be a summer event.
Okay. It's better outside.
Yeah, we like those dates and would ideally like to keep it.
Yeah.
But once again, you gotta be able to review certain things that work and certain things that don't work, and then take it from there.
Yeah. Look, December is big in SA, but I also think you guys watched it early enough. Can kinda, some of the big stuff, like an international trip, if you pay for it early on, by the time it comes, it feels like it's free.
Yeah.
So the early marketing, I guess that's where it helps,
Yeah, I mean, it's year one. We gotta be out there a lot quicker, and we would have loved to be even earlier than when we came.
Yeah, like Afro Nation tickets now for next year.
Last day of the event,
things like that.
That's how we'd like to do it too.
yeah.
And then on revenue, is it even at the bigger scale? Is it still there? Like the biggest money is on the actual day, food, stalls, or on a bigger scale, it kind of gets a bit better because you kind of get this ticket sales up front, some sponsorship deals up front or during.
Well, I mean, the biggest revenue comes from ticket sales.
Okay.
You can't match that in any other way. So ticket sales will be your biggest revenue. Sponsorship is potentially the second biggest.
Okay.
And then food and beverage, I'd say, would be the third.
Okay.
And then from there, you also got camping and maybe your park and rides and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the main thing is ticket sales.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then insurance, I guess they can't insure the full risk, right? What do they insure?
Especially weather, and all the other stuff,
Incidents.
Event specific.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Not profitability.
I mean, like I said to you guys, like profitability, like when you're starting, like year one, you want to break even, right? And then from there, obviously, the more you sell, the more money you can make, But for instance, for something like Hey Neighbor, we want to build something, so money is part of it, but what we want to build has to be, has to be achieved. Yeah.
Interesting. And then this one is more of a silly one. The Scorpion Kings and drama that happened. I don't know if you're part of the guys in the beginning, or if you do work with them. Because there was, this is my event, and then, pouring them on the other side.
I mean, you know what, like, we live in an era where you can say anything. And the more controversial it is, the more it will gain momentum. Scorpion Kings are family. still work with the boys. Love the boys. We did an amazing event at Sun Arena, not based on anyone's concept, based on what we wanted to do. I don't want to entertain nonsense, and I think I actually don't know how to answer certain things just because I'm entertaining really things I shouldn't. But Scorpion Kings, what we did based on what we wanted to do, not based on anything else,
and
right?
with the actual talent.
That's all there is to say on that one.
Chem, he had to drink. I don't know if the beer was finished, but you had to drink the pink drink.
Scorpion Kings. The food and bev part.
I think
that was a bit.
It was challenging because, you gotta remember, I think that was the first full capacity event at the venue since COVID. So the staff had fatigue as well. They weren't used to the numbers.
Because the queues.
The queues were bad, but that comes with the flow.
You gotta understand, we're back outside. Even when you do a sponsorship stock deal, even the number of stock they give you, I'm assuming they usually have a limitation of the number, or it's like a proper open, because it's consignment. You can always just take it back.
We don't do. There's not a lot of outdoor events where this is where you would potentially have bar. In most cases, it's indoor, where the venue will take care of the bar.
Oh, you don't want to worry about it.
You're not involved in that. You can have a brand sponsor or whatever, but the revenue really, the food and beverage is usually gonna be the venue.
I think just from my side, my parting shot is to thank you for agreeing to speak to us. I really enjoyed chatting to you. I had 1,000. I can ask you until tomorrow, but at least you've sort of painted a very nice picture, particularly from someone who really just reads about these things, and you've demystified a lot of things that are not really true that we read and all of that. I just want to say that I appreciate that, and I'm grateful, and thank you for coming through from my side.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the time.
I love hip hop. I'm so glad people like you exist, because I think South African hip hop without people like you would be tough. It's a culture. Hip hop is culture. Whenever people say hip hop is dead, I'm like, but they don't understand how much of culture hip hop influences.
But the thing about it is, as well, is there's a lot of people. I don't consider myself that big in hip hop, right? I benefited from it, but there are a lot of people that your Bad Boy T's, your Ikasumbas, your Amus, Proverb, and now I don't want to leave people, but there's a lot of people that contributed to hip hop, Squatter Camp. Do you remember? Hype was hectic. There's a company, Maria McCoy. I forgot her company that she had, who did quite a lot of stuff for Channel as well. It was quite a dope record label, that hip hop. But a lot of people played a big part in making it cool, man. We probably benefited from it. We're probably the first generation to maybe, benefit from it. But there's a lot of guys that, they did the work, man.
No, I just played the office part. You know what I mean? We don't have fill up the domes. We don't have a lot of this stuff. If also the professional aspect, because that the culture is there, but sometimes they. Like you would know how a tour would be clubs, and guys just don't think of, let's do 5,000, 6,000 tours, and consider eventing and being part of it. and Tibbs with AKA, when they were also doing that, you know, they were showing us how like, because I remember how like early on we were all just following Tibbs. He's so cool, cigars, and you know, like they really like, and then like combine this with business and make it full circle, and then it became such a, it's not just, you know, the rap culture, but it's become a business, an industry that's worth millions.
Yeah, those guys were visionaries, man. They saw it before it happened, and yeah, they put in smart marketing people.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
I think on my side, Glenn, also thank you for coming through. Like, your story is a great story, and I think, like Nico was saying, we could talk to you forever, but I think it's always really great that to get the actual scope of what happens in events. And you know, and Glenn, I mean, they run an entertainment agency, so I think when we last met, just a little funny anecdote. I mean, he was telling me at the time the biggest shows were like the kids shows like Nickelodeon and Paw Patrol. So it's not just like your music shows. There's those kind of events with the right brands, they can be quite lucrative, you know. Which is I wanted to end with that just to show that there's really a broad range and scope. And for those of you who want to get in this space, who maybe think events, don't think the typical idea, conceptualize and always think out the box. I know it's a cliche phrase, but we like the fact that you gave us scope in terms of walking us through how the journey is, and you've got a great story. I mean, like, you know, I hope sometime in the future someone will profile the School of 88, because a lot of great people came out of there, and that time stories like that should be obviously just shared with the people, you know, so that you see that for you to get a Hey Neighbor, you know, and for you to get a Glen 21 Entertainment, and just a lot of the people working together, it all starts from there, you know. It's the same way with hip hop. There's a lot said about Slug Haze, Pro Kid, Squatter Camp. It was a good time for the culture. So we want people to get involved. And I want to see if you have those archives, you know, share some of those stories on your platforms, you know, to give insight, you know, and to see how we get to where we are now, you know, and just not the journey should never be lost, you know. Like they say, to know where you're going, you need to know where you're coming from.
Yeah,
you know?
without that.
Exactly. So this has been episode 18 of the Business Agenda podcast. You know, technical difficulties aside, thank you to Tsepo who managed to keep it rolling. And obviously, this podcast episode will be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. And we will see you on the next episode. Peace.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.